so much, Rachel, for that wonderful introduction and for being such an amazing, inspiring role model yourself, and for having created such an incredible organization, creating such an impact on the community and the world. It's really been such an inspiring day. And I'm excited to share this honor with all of you, all the volunteers of Glamour Gals, and be able to celebrate you for all your incredible work, truly inspiring work. And to share with you my own story for a brief 5 minutes, all the mistakes I made throughout my own journey, all the lessons I learned, because I hope by the time that we finish my story in the next 5 minutes or so that you hopefully learn from those lessons and those mistakes and apply them to your own lives today to become moguls and continue Glamour Gals for the rest of your lives. So my own story actually is like Rachel's. It all starts with my grandmother initially, because she was this amazing inspiration to me. This mogul herself, a maverick of her time. She ran businesses across Asia, newspapers, providing others in need with information and opportunities. And I just wanted to be just like her growing up. She was truly amazing. I mean, she was one of the first women to drive a car in Vietnam, like truly courageous and brave. And because of the war, actually, my parents ended up fleeing to Paris, France, and that's where I grew up. I grew up in Paris. I had a very idyllic childhood there, but my parents always worried that because I was minority, that I wouldn't have opportunities like those around me. So they started watching black and white movies over and over again in the movie theaters from America. And so over time they fell in love with America and thought, what if we moved there for our children so that they could have more opportunities? So at age 10, out of nowhere, they moved us from Paris, France, to Plano, Texas. Anyone here from Plano? So it's a little bit like how it sounds, Plano, Texas. But I did love it so much. I learned so much because I was 10 years old, didn't know how to speak English, but I tried to learn in Plano by watching TV shows like Friends and I Love Lucy. And I listened to the radio, Delilah on KVIL, playing love songs. And so that's how I learned how to speak English, and I could see for myself how powerful pop culture and media and the world around us could be for learning and education, and I never forgot that feeling and experience. But then when I was 14 years old, when I was in high school, that's when my entire life changed. Because that was the year that my biggest role model in life, the one person I looked up to so much, that was the year that she passed away. And the day that she passed away, I'll never forget. It was that day that I made a promise to her before she passed away that I would do everything I could for the rest of my life to follow in her footsteps. I was going to dedicate every single moment for the rest of my life working toward the same goal and mission she had had. I promised her. So ever since that moment, since I was 14 years old, that's all I've ever worked towards. And so now I'm 16. I'm just kidding. I know I still look young. But when I was 16, I was thinking about, okay, how could I be like my grandmother more? And that's when, around this time, I realized I didn't have the money to go to college. But I started to look around and think about what I could do to be like her. And that's when I saw this TV show called Gilmore Girls. Has anyone seen it? Yeah. Rory Gilmore, amazing, inspiring figure herself. And just like me, she was shy and introvert, and then she goes off to Yale and she runs the school newspaper, just like my grandmother had run. And so when I saw that, I thought, wow, maybe that's what I could do to be like my grandmother. So even though I didn't have the money to go to college, and I didn't want to tell my parents what I was doing secretly, I wrote a letter to Yale and asked if they would just give me the chance. I knew I could do this one day. I knew it could be like my grandmother, follow in her footsteps, if they could just give me the chance. And so I wrote them this letter, and then several months went by of silence, and then all of a sudden I looked at my mailbox, and there was a fat envelope there, and they were letting me in on full scholarship. So I ended up then, for the first day of class at Yale, seeing what a college looked like for the first time. And I was there, and the first year went by, and as you probably could guess, I wasn't like my grandmother, unfortunately. I was still shy, I was still the introvert. So as a result, I went from my dorm room to the classroom and back and forth, and didn't have an impact at all like my grandmother. I was still so shy, I didn't feel like I belonged. But ultimately, at the summertime, I came back to Plano, And I tried to find my center, and I told myself I couldn't regret a single moment of my life ever again. I had to step forward, I had to be a part of the conversation. I could do it, I could be like my grandmother. I had to go after opportunities as well. So I remember coming back to then Yale my second year, and then I went for it. I joined the school newspaper, just like Rory, just like my grandmother, and then I ended up running the school newspaper, bringing it from bankruptcy at the time that I stepped on board to record profitability within 6 months. Going around to restaurants, to organizations, selling door to door to door, my worst nightmare as an introvert. And that became, as a result, my first entrepreneurial experience, making me realize I really could be like my grandmother. And so then, from then on, I thought, okay, now what next could I do? And at that time, I saw another movie, this one called Legally Blonde. So, amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, you have to. And in this one, Elle Woods, the protagonist, is again just like me. Like, didn't believe in herself, and then she goes off to Harvard and for grad school, and just kills it there. So, I remember watching that movie and not having the money to go to grad school at that time, not even to visit it. So that was my one preview of what grad school looked like. And so all of a sudden, I decided to write them a letter as well. And so I wrote, asking for the chance. I knew I could this time create a company. Perhaps I could create a company to be like my grandmother, to create a company that could provide others in need with information and opportunities. And so then several months passed, and I got a letter back that they're going to let me in. What? So I became the youngest student at Harvard Business School. I ended there and didn't feel, again, like I belonged because everyone else was different than me. And so that whole year passed, again, same thing, deja vu. I barely spoke up in class, which is a huge challenge because actually your grade at Harvard Business School depends on how many times you speak up in class, literally. So then came back to Plano, my center, and I found my focus again. And I said to myself, I can't let a single moment of my life ever go by again with regret. So I have to really be a part of the conversation. I have to raise my hand, I have to speak up, I have to put my foot forward. So I came back to HBS and started to do that and started to write down all of my ideas every single time I had something to say. And I wanted to look down at the card at the end of class and make sure that I at least raised my hand every single time so I wouldn't regret looking down at that card. Of course, I would still breathe a sigh of relief anytime I wasn't called, but I still at least I tried. And so anyways, I just say this in case you're the introvert in the audience today, you're the shy girl, to remember to always speak up, to always remember to write down your ideas. If you're finding yourself not speaking up, not being a part of the conversation, and try to raise your hand every single time. Anyways, to fast forward, at that time, then I remember now graduating from HBS and looking around and realizing I had no contacts, no one in the industry that I was looking to enter into. And I remembered though that back at Yale, I had mentored a young woman named Lizzie. She had been just a year or two behind me, and we had been close friends throughout, and I had always been the one helping her over and over again, helping her with different job decisions, etc. And at that time, it was my turn for help, and I didn't want to ask for help, but I knew again that if I didn't, I would regret. And remember, I told myself I would never regret a single moment of my life ever again. So this time, I asked Lizzie, was there anyone that she could introduce me to? Anyone at all in the media industry where I was looking to enter? And she said, why did you wait for so long? Of course I'll introduce you. And the one person I want to introduce you to is actually my father, Rob. And as it turned out, Rob was the longtime props master on Saturday Night Live. For 20 years or so, plus had been the props master for Saturday Night Live. And so I went to Rob and said the one thing that I hope you remember that you repeat from now on to all your role models, was that I said to him, you know, I would love to learn from him. I would love to collaborate with him. Was there anything at all that I could do for him? The most boring thing, the most mundane task, please give it to me. I'd love to do it, to learn from him. And he said, are you sure? The most boring thing, the most mundane task? And I was like, absolutely. And so he said, well, actually at night, I actually am a playwright on Broadway, a very prolific playwright. I have a lot of shows. Why don't you become our check-in girl? And so that's how I became a check-in girl on Broadway. Literally checking people in, that was my job. I had pencil paper, I was just checking people in. But then me being me, I started just going overboard. I started researching every person coming in. I started creating Excel databases of every single person coming in. And so as a result, he would have all this data on all the investors coming in, all the producers, all the directors, the cast members coming in, and it would create such momentum for the show that then it would sell out and get produced and just do incredibly well on Broadway. And so after a couple of weeks, he said, actually, instead of being our check-in girl, why don't you become our general manager for the shows? And so that's how I became a general manager. Several weeks later, he then turned to me and said, actually, now, why don't you actually meet my cousin, Stephen, as well? And Stephen had been the one to discover Lady Gaga. He had managed Britney Spears. And so I met with Stephen, and I told him the same thing I told Rob. Was there anything I could do for him? The most boring thing, the most mundane task. I would love to learn from him, anything at all. And he said, are you sure? And I said, yes. So he was like, well, actually, at nights, like many other VIPs, I'm writing up a ton of articles and I could never get to them. And I heard you ran the school newspaper, so maybe you can edit my articles. And the thing is, I didn't know how to edit articles because I run the school newspaper from the business side. So, of course I said, yeah, I'll edit those articles. And so he sent me articles, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I would remove every word, and I would add in new words, and I would try to do it speedily so he would see my passion, and maybe that would count for something. And then I remember sending him the first article, and he was like, I like this. So he sent me the next one, and the next one, and then the next article, and the next project, and the next venture, and soon I became Stephen's protege. And then one day he turned to me and said, actually, why don't I introduce you to my best friend, Anne, now? And Anne was the president of BBC. And so that's how I started to work for Anne and BBC. And now years later, Anne is on our board at Google. And so after working for Anne and BBC, I then worked for the president of HBO and then later for one of the presidents of CBS, where I became their youngest executive by age 24 or so. And so I was overseeing TV stations, radio stations, websites, mobile properties from strategy and business development standpoint. But then at nights, I knew that I needed to know more skill sets to be like my grandmother, the one person that had inspired me all this time. So I thought, okay, to build a company, I need to know strategy and business development, content creation and distribution, marketing and branding, product and technology. So I took on side jobs, reaching out to more role models, the same way that I told you how I did with Rob and Stephen. And I reached out to them and I said, was there anything I could do for them? The most boring thing, the most mundane task. And so the second job I ended up landing at nights was working with the vice mayor of Beijing, working with him to create a venture where we could bridge the cultural gaps between US and China. And I became the global head of marketing for this venture. And then the third job I had at nights was producing feature films and documentaries with incredible A-list talent like Gerard Butler or Patricia Arquette around different social issues that needed more global awareness. So I then became, for example, the producer behind the first North American feature film to feature a man with Down syndrome in the lead role. And so I would always use these films to highlight new social issues, bring new voices into the pool, new talent. So I had all three jobs at the same time, and then finally, the end of my story is that what happened was that all of a sudden Forbes magazine had started this new tradition of publishing this list at the time that was very small. No one knew what it was about, but it was called the 30 Under 30. And they had printed all these celebrity names on there, like Taylor Swift, and Evan Spiegel from Snap, and Pete Cashmore from Mashable, and David Cobb from Tumblr, etc. And they must have run out of celebrity names because then they put me on the final slot. And all of a sudden, they had accidentally as well included my email address, which they've since removed. But as a result of that, I started getting a flood of emails from all around the world. I still remember the first morning, like waking up, 6 a.m., looking at my phone, and then it exploded with so many hundreds of emails from all around the world. And so I remember looking at these emails, and all of them were asking for help and advice on how to get these jobs too. Was there a way that I could help them find these jobs or get a promotion or interview that just they didn't think was possible in their society? And so I would write back to every single letter. Me being me, I could never give fluffy advice. I would give them steps 1, 2, 3, here's what you do. And so 3 pages long, they would tell me, as I would hear back from them, that my letter, my 3-page long letter, had changed their life. That they did get that interview or opportunity or promotion they never thought would be possible. And as I would write back more and more, that's when I came up with the idea for Mogul. What if we could, all of us, just be able to share truly what was going on in our lives, truly the obstacles and challenges and struggles that we were facing, and then from that be able to share ideas and opportunities and insights and from there be able to reach our goals and realize our full potential. And so the final catalyst towards Mogul was that I realized I didn't have money to hire a team of engineers. I had learned the final skill set, product and technology, to create a company. But maybe the one final thing I could do was maybe to teach myself how to code and build this myself. Maybe that's the final thing I could do to help all these young girls' lives around the world. And so every single night, every single day, would work with the president of CBS, Vice Mayor of Beijing, Gerard and Patricia, etc. But then at nights at 3 a.m., I would pull up this PDF that changed my life, called Ruby on Rails tutorial by Michael Hartl, Hartl, if ever you're interested in learning how to code. It truly changed my life as I went through the first 10 chapters. Could barely go through the first one, which was what software to download. Literally, it took me a month to do that one. I couldn't get through it, but I persevered and finally finished the remaining 9 chapters. And by the end of it, I built the first very, very, very ugly version of Mogul. And I was so proud of it though. I built it with my own 2 hands, Ruby on Rails, and I sent it out to the thousands of young women following me online. And ultimately, we ended up exploding to 1 million women within our first week, becoming the fastest growing platform for women ever. And so fast forward to today, we are now the largest female millennial Gen Z platform worldwide and app, and ultimately help so many incredible Fortune 1000 companies to be able to attract, retain, and advance this diverse talent to create a more equal workforce within their workplaces, a more equal world in this way. And ultimately, for every dollar that we earn, we provide back free educational resources to girls and women in need through the United Nations, through incredible organizations like Glamour Gals, so that ultimately now 62 million girls and women around the world can receive free educational resources. And so all throughout my story, I was telling you very specific things to be able to leave you with 3 main lessons, truly. The first, to be always strategic yet flexible. In your whole life, you're going to be faced with choices that you make and what career to pursue, etc. But I want you to think about one thing, which is your why, W-H-Y. Your why, passion, your purpose. What is your passion, your purpose, your why? Every single day when you get out of bed, what is it that you could do that would make you feel like your life and career are one and the same? That you're not going to work, you're getting to live your life. Your life and career are one and the same. What is that? What is that why? What is that purpose, passion? Write it down, and then think about all the skill sets that you need to develop to get there. What is it that you need to learn? For me, remember, that was in order to follow in the footsteps of my grandmother, I needed to know how to ultimately learn strategy, business development, content creation and distribution, marketing, branding, product and technology, etc. And then from there, work backwards again. So think about the role models you can contact. Contact all those role models, and then reach out to not just 50, but reach out to 100. Reach out to as many as you can, because at the end of the day, of those 100, of those 50, 10 might reply, and 2 might actually get tea with you, but 1 will change your life. So that's my second lesson to you. So first, be strategic and flexible. Identify your purpose, your passion, your why. Think of the skills that you need to develop to get there. Second, contact your role models. Collaborate to accelerate. Reach out to as many people as you can throughout your life that you admire. Reach out to them to see if you can do the most boring task for them, the most mundane thing, and then find a way to get with them and give back to them and learn from them. 3, to always follow your gut. All throughout my story, I was telling you of all these moments in which I was not courageous, not confident, but I just kept going anyways because I didn't want to regret. Keep following your gut, always. Always speak up, always join the conversation, always put your foot forward. And then finally, as you remember all these 3 lessons, remember one more thing, which is to always be kind, authentic, and generous, as you are today as volunteers of Glamour Gals. Always be kind, authentic, and generous. Always give and give and give, because that's the energy you're giving off, and that's the energy you're getting back. After all, if I hadn't been giving and giving and giving to all those incredible young women writing to me earlier on, I wouldn't have the honor of being here with you today. So thank you.